October in Manhattan is like a city that is neither fully autumn nor ready for winter. The dance of yellowing leaves with the wind, the time accumulated on the sidewalks. When Taylor Swift saw that her calendar was completely empty for a week for the first time after the busiest tours of her life, she decided to enjoy this silence in Manhattan. He wanted to go out alone, out of fame, out of managers, out of fans, out of flashbulbs, just a person. Wearing a thick trench coat, glasses, and a simple beret, he landed at a subway station in the morning. He wanted to cross from Brooklyn to Manhattan. He had no plans. Just walk, take the subway, maybe have a coffee in a cafe. He didn't have headphones in his ears because he wanted to hear the sounds of New York. While waiting for a train on the third platform, he noticed something. Sitting on the opposite bench, a boy of 11 or 12 was drawing in a brown notebook held in his left hand. His colored markers were attached to a worn backpack. His dirty yellow t-shirt was complemented by a pair of sweatpants faded from washing. His face was dull, but his hands were alive, as if what he was drawing was keeping him alive. Taylor looked at him out of the corner of her eye, and the boy looked up for a moment. Their eyes met. The boy flinched for a moment, then turned back to his notebook. Taylor wanted to sit next to him, but he was worried about being recognized. Still, his inner voice said, "Go." He walked up to him and asked politely, "What are you drawing?" The boy answered without looking up, "Trains and the people in them, but today I am alone." Taylor sighed. "I'm lonely today, too." The boy raised his head, looked at Taylor carefully. He didn't recognize her, just saw her as a woman. "What's your name?" said Taylor. "Yvonne." Taylor smiled slightly. "Me too, Taylor." The boy handed him the page he had drawn on. It was a simple but impressive pencil drawing. The interior of a subway car, a man sitting alone, a woman looking out, and a sentence written in the background. "Everyone is going somewhere, but no one knows where." Taylor's eyes welled up when she read the sentence. It was clear that this boy had been through a lot for his age. "Did you write this?" Taylor said, her voice shaking. Evan shook his head. "My father always said, then he left." "Gone?" "Yes, not by train, but one night I woke up and my mom was crying and my father was gone." Taylor didn't know what to say. They fell silent. A few minutes passed in silence. I went into the train's here. Taylor walked in, Evan behind him. They sat opposite each other, as if only they could see each other, even in a crowded carriage. "Do you go to school?" Taylor asked. Evan shrugged. "Sometimes. But mostly I help my mom. I have a brother. He's 5. Taylor's heart got stuck. Responsibility at this age. Suddenly, it wasn't Taylor inside her, but the human inside her that spoke. "Someday I'll have a surprise for you, Evan." The boy squinted, a little curious. "Surprise?" "Yes, but first you teach me something. Like, why do you draw trains?" Evan adjusted his glasses. "Because trains take people away, but sometimes they don't bring people back." One more sentence, and Taylor swallowed. The train stopped 3 stops later. Taylor turned to Evan. "Let's get off here if you want. Let's have a coffee together. Or a hot chocolate." Evan hesitated but then nodded. "Sure, but not coffee, hot chocolate." The train doors opened. Taylor Swift disappeared into the crowded streets of Manhattan with 11-year-old Evan. And in that moment, nothing was planned, but everything seemed right. Maybe meeting on a subway, maybe just 3 stops. But sometimes the direction of a life could change completely in those 3 stops. Taylor Swift and Evan emerged from the noise of the subway and headed for an old cafe on the corner of 24th Street. Taylor remembered this place from years ago. When she was just starting to make music, she would sometimes drink coffee here and write lyrics in her notebook. In the window of the cafe was a steam-wiped heart with the handwritten words, "Heartbreak doesn't go away with coffee, but coffee keeps you company." Evan's eyes lit up when he stepped inside. The floral covers on the tables, the secondhand novels on the bookshelf, the posters of old jazz albums on the wall. It was all foreign to him, yet magical at the same time. Taylor went to the counter and ordered 2 hot chocolates. Evan sat at a table and looked out the window. Outside, people were walking in a hurry. Inside, time seemed to stand still. "Does your mom work this late?" Taylor asked, sitting down. Evan shook his head. She works 2 jobs, cleaning in the morning and waitressing at the restaurant at night. Sometimes she leaves early in the morning and comes back late at night. Then I take care of my brother." Taylor looked down at her cup. The steam was still disappearing before it reached her lips. She sighed. "How old are you, Evan?" 11. But last year, I felt like 12. This year, I feel like 9. That answer silenced Taylor. It wasn't the words, but the burdens that made Evan grow. A little embarrassed, Evan reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled notebook. He opened its pages. There were dozens of people he had drawn, old people sitting on the subway, couples drinking coffee, children. All of them were drawn in fine detail and with emotion. Taylor admired the drawings. "Did you draw these?" Evan bowed his head. "It would be better if my pen was good." Taylor turned the pages of the notebook without squinting. One picture showed a lonely woman sitting by a window. There was summer rain outside the window. Her hair looked like Taylor's. Taylor asked softly, "Who is this?" Evan averted his eyes. "You! I remember drawing you on the subway." Taylor cleared his throat. It was a silent praise. "So, Evan, now that you've drawn me, I have a proposition." Evan looked up curiously. "Can I spend a few days with you? Like, can you show me the most beautiful places in the city? But not like a tourist. I want to see New York through Evan's eyes." Evan was stunned. "But why? You're a star." "No," Taylor said softly. "Today I'm just someone. And you reminded me of something. Maybe something I've forgotten for a long time." The cafe owner brought 2 more cups of hot chocolate. This time Evan smiled. It was a real smile. They walked together that day. They jogged along the edge of Central Park, leafed through books in Bryant Park. Taylor's manager kept calling, but Taylor just texted, "I'm busy today." At the end of the day, Evan took Taylor to the corner of a building, a rusty iron door, a wall covered in graffiti. Above the door was written, "Back Room Boys." Taylor frowned. "What is this place?" Evan headed inside. "This is our world." When the door opened, 7 or 8 children were inside, painting on old tables. There was no music, but the colors were like a song. A woman with gray hair but a young smile was talking to the children. "This is Mrs. Delaney," Evan said. "We come over after school. She gives us pencils and paper and we draw. Sometimes we read poetry. It's quiet here." Taylor approached the woman, holding out his hand. "I'm Taylor." The woman smiled. "I know it's you, but you came here today as a human being, not as a star. Welcome." Taylor took a step back. The word was more powerful for him than the applause. That night, Taylor cried for the first time in a long time, silently, in a hotel room, because Evan's world had shaken her to her core. He spent time with Evan for a week, but he hadn't yet learned the deepest wound. Evan's constant coughing, his occasional stumbling when he walked. Something was wrong, and Taylor was about to learn that truth. Wanting to take a closer look at Evan's drawings, Taylor invited him to his studio one day. Evan looked around like a child with big eyes, admiring everything. There were music records, acoustic guitars, and old concert posters adorning the walls. But Evan's gaze was fixed only on a small notebook by the window, Taylor's own sketchbook. "Do you draw too?" Evan asked. Taylor shook his head. "I used to, but not as beautiful as you." Evan was embarrassed to hear this, but his eyes lit up. "Maybe one day we can draw together?" Taylor smiled. "Maybe today." They started drawing together. Taylor noticed Evan's hands were shaking. She tried not to notice. But then Evan put his arm on the corner of the paper, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. "Are you okay?" Taylor asked. Evan opened his eyes. "I get like this sometimes." The doctor said, "Breathing exercises. It's just fatigue." Taylor did not find this answer sufficient. That evening, she wanted to go to Evan's house, to meet his mother, to find out more. But the tension on Evan's face stopped him. "My mom doesn't like company," Evan said, "especially these days." Taylor didn't give up. The next day, he secretly followed Evan. The boy was walking fast, but Taylor didn't stay far behind him. Evan entered a hospital. Taylor's heart skipped a beat. When he walked through the door, he approached the nursewoman at the front desk. "I'm looking for Evan Cruz," she said. The woman stopped for a moment. The moment she recognized who Taylor was, her eyes widened. But then she looked at the notes and just nodded. "Oncology, 3rd floor." Taylor turned the word over and over in his mind. Oncology. He found Evan in his hospital room, a small room with white walls. Sunlight poured in through the window. Evan was sitting on the edge of the bed. He was wearing pajamas, a beanie on his head. He was holding a sketchbook. Taylor fell silent in front of the door. The boy smiled when he saw him, but there was a huge shame hidden in that smile. "You shouldn't have told me," Taylor said in a low voice. Evan lowered his eyes to the floor. I don't want people to know. So they don't get upset, especially you." Taylor came over and sat down next to the bed. "I don't want you to be sad, Evan. I don't want you to feel like you're alone." Evan shook his head. "I'm not alone. I have Mrs. Delaney, my mom, you ... Taylor tried to hide her tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because," Evan swallowed. "You are the star. Everyone knows you. Everyone wants something from you. I wanted to laugh with you, walk with you, eat ice cream, be ordinary." Taylor started to cry. At that moment, his whole world went silent. The stages, the awards, the spotlights, all were lost to a child's smile. "You're too ordinary for me, Evan. But at the same time, you're not like anyone else." After that day, Taylor started going to the hospital every day. Sometimes he read to her. Sometimes they drew together. Taylor loved his imagination. Evan would say, "When I get better," not "if I get better." One morning when Taylor arrived, Evan was gone. The room was empty. There was only a notebook on the bed and an envelope. Taylor opened the envelope. Inside was this note. "My blood values were not good today. They took me to intensive care. Maybe I'll be asleep when you get this letter. But I have one request. Please support my mom. She gave me everything and promise me, if I don't get better, keep my sketchbook. If you ever make a book, put inspired by Evan in it, because I've become a story, Taylor, like you." Taylor pressed the notebook to his chest. In that moment, it was as if all the lights inside her went out. But at the same time, Evan's words were giving birth to a new light. Nothing was over yet, but something had changed forever. The silence of the hospital waiting room was deepened by the ticking of the wall clock every second. Evan leaned back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. His hands were still shaking. He held his 3rd cup of coffee in his hand, but he didn't even think about drinking it. It was one of those moments when time seemed to sink in, flowing neither forward nor backward. After a deep sigh, he was startled by the nurse calling his name in a whisper. "Mr. Harper?" As he stood up, he felt his knees buckle slightly. Lack of sleep, fatigue, and a succession of concussions had taken over his body. He locked eyes with the nurse. "Your mother is stable, but the next 48 hours will be critical," the woman said in a soft voice. "You can't be with her in intensive care, but we will let you know." Evan could only shake his head. At that moment, he had even forgotten how to cry. It was as if he had left his emotions inside, becoming just a shadow on the outside. Instead of taking a taxi, he decided to walk. As the night chill cut his face on the streets of Manhattan, only his mother's last words were spinning in his head. "I want you to be happy, Evan, just happy." But how could he be happy? After his father's abandonment, he and his mother had endured everything life threw at them together. She had worked for him, she had skipped meals to save for his school fees. She had not been able to go to university, but she had attended Evan's graduation with all her heart. Now her life depended on the rhythm of a machine. A few streets down, he entered a 24-hour library that was still open. It was where he had often come to study during his university years. It gave him a nostalgic peace, but also sadness. He was browsing through an archive of newspapers on the back shelves, full of old issues, when a voice stopped him. "Evan?" Turning his head, he struggled for a few seconds to recognize the owner of the voice. Many years had passed. A face from high school, Lena Cartwright. There was a familiar weariness in his eyes, but also a subtle smile. "Is it really you?" she said. "The last time I saw you here, you were studying for your night exams. You were still going to the same seat." Evan laughed lightly. "Yeah, so some things don't change." Lena got up from her seat. "Would you like a coffee? I have a lot to tell you." He wanted to say no, but he kept silent, because silence hurt more now. When they sat together, Lena took a long look at Evan's face. "You look tired," he said. Evan asked without averting his eyes, "Have you ever felt like you wanted to get off at a stop in your life, but you just passed by?" Lena remained silent. Then she whispered, "Every day." As the first light of morning enveloped Manhattan, Evan returned to the hospital where his mother was staying. As he left Lena, he realized he had left a small piece of paper in his pocket. The note said only this: "Stopping is not bad, Evan. Maybe it's necessary to start again." That day, as he watched his mother through the window of the intensive care unit, he made a decision from the deepest part of himself. In the midst of all the chaos of life, in the midst of loss and brokenness, it was necessary to start again. And sometimes it's not a bus ticket. It's just a conversation with someone, a confrontation with the past, or someone understanding you. For Evan, the story would not end 3 stops later. Maybe now, the real journey was beginning. From the moment Taylor found out that Evan was in the hospital, she dedicated every day to spending time with him. She would go to the hospital in the mornings, hold Evan's hand, read books with him, sometimes just sitting in silence. Evan's sketchbook sat in a corner of the room, a new page added every day. One day, Taylor made Evan a proposal. "Evan, I want to write a song with you, a song that tells your story." Evan's eyes lit up. "Really?" Taylor nodded. "Yes, in your words, your feelings." Evan opened his notebook and turned a page. "I've already written something," he said shyly. Taylor picked up the page and began to read. "My eyes are closed, but I see colors, no voices, but I hear melodies. My heart is tired, but it still beats because I have you. You stand by my side." Taylor couldn't hold back the tears. This is great, Evan." Evan smiled. "We can complete it together." From that day on, they worked on the song together every day. Taylor brought his guitar, Evan wrote the lyrics. The song told their shared story. The hospital room became a studio. However, Evan's condition was getting worse. The doctors made it clear to Taylor, Evan doesn't have much time left. Taylor didn't want to accept this reality, but Evan was aware of everything. One day he turned to Taylor and said, "I know I'll be gone soon, but this song will be my voice. When people listen to it, they will remember me." Taylor took Evan's hand. "I promise this song will reach the world." Evan was smiling, even in his last days. "I'm so lucky to have met you, Taylor. I've had the best memories of my life with you." "I'm so happy to meet you too, Evan," Taylor said through tears. As Evan breathed his last breath, Taylor hummed the song beside him. "My eyes are closed, but I see colors. No voices, but I hear melodies. My heart is tired, but it still beats. Because I have you. You stand by my side." The first morning after Evan's death, Taylor walked to the bus stop. The air was similar to the morning she and Evan first met. As a cool breeze caressed her face, her eyes automatically fell on her reflection in the glass. This time she was alone, but inside, there was a small shadow sitting with her. Evan was no longer in the seat next to her, but inside her. Taylor pulled the last note Evan had given him out of his pocket. "If one day you don't see me, look again in 3 stops. Maybe I will be a smile carried by the wind. Maybe I will echo in a child's laughter. But know that I will always be there. Just know to look." Taylor lowered her head and laughed lightly. "Stupid boy." She swallowed. In just a month, the song she dedicated to Evan's memory has resonated around the world. But this was not Taylor's original intention. That song was written for Evan and was a carrier of his memory. Every income, every award, every applause was like a flower thrown into Evan's heart. One day, Taylor got a letter from Evan's mom. Inside was just a photograph. It was of Evan with his little brother, looking up at the sky from a hospital window. Underneath was a note. "He always saw you as a star, and now somewhere among the stars, he smiles." Taylor hung the photo on the wall of his Manhattan apartment. He wrote only one sentence underneath: 3 stops later. As time passed, Taylor returned to his old pace, but nothing was the same anymore. Every time she went on stage, a special chair for Evan was left empty in a corner of the stage. At the end of every concert that song was played, everyone clapped, but Taylor was always silent, because for her, that song was not a performance. It was a farewell. And years later, a little boy was walking through the streets of Manhattan, humming that old Taylor Swift song. When his mother asked, "Where did you learn that song?" He shrugged. "I heard it on a video, but it was like someone whispered it to me." Taylor was sitting in a cafe watching the moment. She smiled, and a voice rose up inside her. "My eyes are closed, but I see colors." Evan was no more, but the hearts he touched grew with his voice. Taylor closed his eyes and leaned against the bus window. One stop passed, then another, and at the 3rd stop, when she opened her eyes, she murmured with a slight smile, "I found you, my little friend."